Hello and welcome back. I'm Christina, an artist and illustrator. Today I'll be sharing some more alcohol marker coloring effects with you. Since it's starting to turn just a little bit cooler where I live, we'll be coloring some sweaters today in our fall coloring book, but you can use these effects on any page you like. If you'd like to use the same page I'm using, I'll link it in the description below, or you can pick up my coloring book and I'll link that as well. I'm working on a printed page because I plan on doing this page more than once. Be sure to put a barrier between your page and the surface you're working on, because for this first effect, we'll be using a sharp blade to cut right on top of the paper. You're also going to need some washi tape, and this effect is really fun. Washi is decorative tape, and it's not so sticky that it'll rip your paper, but you still have to be a little bit careful, and you have to be mindful about what pattern you choose. I'm going to take my time to pick the right style for this sweater vest. I really like the colors of this washi tape, but the pattern elements are a bit large and far apart, and I'd have to stick two pieces of tape together to get them to line up. This washi tape is a little bit transparent, and this washi tape is a little too skinny for the sections I'm filling in. I love this washi tape because of the gold embellishment. And it's a really great size because it fits right over each diamond. I'm going to stick it lightly right on top of the paper and rip off a little piece so that it covers one diamond. Carefully, with pressure, but not too hard, I'm going to cut right next to the black outline. It takes time and practice to get the pressure right, but I promise you it is possible. It did not take me too long to figure out exactly how hard to push. When you're done, you gently hold on to the washi tape that's supposed to stay on the paper and gently lift off the tape that you're throwing away. I'm cutting out alternate diamonds on this vest because I want it to have sort of an argyle look. I'll admit I did mess up a few times and added washi tape to the wrong diamonds, but that's the great thing about washi tape. You can just lift it up and try again. It's easy to make little mistakes like cutting too far away from the black line or too far on top of it, but they're fixable mistakes, and I'll show you how I clean mine up at the end. I prefer adding washi tapes to areas that are easy to cut. Even here, they sometimes get stuck in the corners, so you have to be careful. It's harder to add washi tape to really tiny areas and very curvy or detailed areas. On this page, the most challenging area to add washi is that tiny little diamond on the bottom right of the vest. I had to cut a couple of pieces because they kept lifting up and falling off. I've already made a shorter video of this process, and I'll link that down below. And it makes it look like this process is a lot faster than it is. It does take a little time, but I think the results are worth it. Some of the details you get on washi tape you really can't replicate with alcohol markers. You could fill in the rest of these diamonds with the same washi tape, another design, or a color like I'm doing here. We're done with the color, and I do like it, but it's time to fix the tiny little mistakes. They're hard to see on the video, but there are some gaps. So I'm using a permanent waterproof marker to fill in the areas of white that I missed. I forgot to mention it before, but I'll go ahead and list all the materials I'm using in the description of the video down below. I, of course, colored this page twice. Here's my second color palette. And right here I'm adding the shadows to the inside of the vest. If you didn't know, you can add alcohol markers on top of washi tape. You can see here I'm adding some shadows to the right side of these pieces. Next, we're moving on to the embroidery effect. I love it because it makes it look like the artwork on the page is stitched on like a fabric patch. This sweater already has stripes, but we're adding more to the larger areas of white, and you'll see why in a moment. I'm gently erasing my lines because we'll be coloring right on top of them, and I don't want to take the chance of being able to see the lines underneath the color. For each color, you'll need 2 to 3 different shades of the same color because we'll need to create shadows and highlights to make this area look like thread. You can see here I'm gently flicking my marker in a downward line, which is slightly curved. They shouldn't be completely straight, and they don't need to be perfect. We're using our lightest color first, and we're coloring the top sections of each stripe. Once you get a hang of this effect, the most challenging part, at least for me, is actually choosing your colors. It's helpful to experiment with this on a little scratch sheet of paper before you commit to your final colors. Next, we'll take a darker shade of purple to fill in the bottom of each stripe. We're doing the same technique, just upside down. Again, we're making little flicking motions in a very slight curve, all in the same direction. They don't have to be the same height or width apart, and in fact, I like to vary it up a little. Next, after all the color is dry, we're going over the bottom half of the stripes again with a slightly darker color. I like to make these lines just a little bit shorter than the second set of lines we made. We're darkening the shadow area and adding a little bit more depth. I love this technique because it's so transformative. At this point, it just looks like a mess to me, and it really doesn't transform until the very last step. So if you get to this point and hate it so far, have no fear. For the second color, we're doing the same thing. We'll start with a lighter shade on top and a darker shade on the bottom. And you don't have to color in just stripes. I'll show you at the end of this video how I did the embroidery effect on a very small area of the page. As soon as I put my darker brown color down, it felt a little bit too dark to work with the lighter brown on top. So I've decided I'm going to darken the top area of these stripes after I'm done with the bottoms. Next, we need to add highlights, so I'm grabbing my smallest gel pen. I have 3 sizes, a 10, an 8, and a 5, and I'm going to use the 5 to make very thin highlights on each section of stripes. I'm doing the same thing that I did with the alcohol markers. I'm drawing thin, slightly curved lines, but this time I'm going over both the light and dark areas of each stripe. I'm going sort of fast, and I'm not too worried about them being too messy, and I'm also not worried about going over the black outlines of the sweater because we're going to cover those up in the final step. Sometimes when you use these gel pens, it looks like they don't go on very bright, but give them a moment and the white does start showing up as it dries. For the final step, you'll need a black fine liner. And we're going to use it to mess up these really smooth black lines. All you need to do is make a very small zigzag line on top of the black lines. This is why you didn't need to be too careful with that white gel pen. You'll be covering over any stray marks that snuck up onto that outline. I love this step because it really makes the dark lines look like thread. And oops, I almost forgot. For the final step, I'm taking a super skinny black fine liner and adding tiny stray pieces of thread sneaking out from different areas of the sweater. If you want, you can also use the same pen to add little stitch marks between each stripe. It's really fun to complete a whole page with this effect, and I've done the pumpkin spice page from my Fall Favorites coloring book. I'll leave a link to that down below. Our final effect is really easy. I've colored everything on the page, and we're going to turn this sweater into a sticker. You can see I've colored in the scarf and the hat with 2 effects I've shown you before. I'll leave a link to that video down below. And in order to make these into stickers, you have to put an outline behind each item. Now I'm only going to turn this bottom sweater into a sticker. I'm drawing a very faint, thin border around the edges, and I'm going to keep this area white before I add a background to this page. In my opinion, the sticker effect works on items best when they're on top of other items or on top of a colored background. Since this sweater is on top of another sweater, I'll need to use a white gel pen or acrylic pen and color right over it. My background is colored now, and you can see where I left that white border around the sweater. You don't have to do it this way. You could use a white gel pen or acrylic pen and go right over your background. It's completely up to you. The border is really starting to make this sweater look like a sticker. I'm covering over some little white areas that went over the outline, and then I'm using a thin black fine liner to outline the white border. I'd love to know which of these effects have been your favorites so far. Please let me know in the comments down below. And if anything isn't too clear, feel free to ask me questions as well. And if you like the color palette I used on this page, I'll list them down in the description. Lastly, I've chosen a light gray color to add a slight shadow to the bottom and right side of the sticker. She is complete. I've shown you the washi effect, the embroidery effect, and the sticker effect today. And like I mentioned before, I definitely did this page twice, but I think this one is my favorite. I love the purples and oranges and the way all of the effects work so well together. Editing Christina here, I just noticed I missed a spot on that embroidered sweater. Let me know if you caught it too. Next, I'll show you my first practice page with these 3 techniques. I used a green and orange palette for this page, and you'll see I added the embroidery effect to the little pumpkins on this sticker sweater. It's funny, I didn't like the effect on them at first, and now I think it's really adorable. Thank you for joining me today, and for those of you who have stuck with me through the whole video, I'm going to be posting a poll on my community page to decide what page from Fall Favorites I should color next. Thank you for being here, take care, and I'll see you soon.